Welcome to Wilder Wolves Hall of Fame Mode Fandom. My name is Wilder Adams, and for this Wolves Fandom Friday episode, I'm joined by Zach Rudeen, and we are going to give our own stock risers and droppers for the Minnesota Timberwolves 15 games into this season. Anything Timberwolves related doesn't have to be strictly just like players, it could be trends, it can be so many different possibilities. But before we get started, Zach, how are you doing?
Doing great. Solid start to the year, 10-5. Obviously, we're taking care of the bad teams. Got to take care of some good teams soon. But yeah, it's good to be on the show with you. And we finally got the technical side of stuff working. We always, every single time we do anything together, there's always something that's not working behind the scenes. But we got to go in today.
I thought this time was a special occasion though, because I thought it was your fault this time. And in the beginning, it kind of was. But while we were getting it resolved, once it was finally resolved, my microphone stopped working today, right when we started recording. So I have an alternative mic that I'm using right now, but it's not visible. So it is going to be an adjustment. I think it's the Zach curse. I blame him with passion fully. So we'll move on from the technological issues. And like I said, this is going to be kind of a reflection point 15 games into the season. Just there's expectations every single year that happen, whether you go up and down. And this time, there's some stock changes and some things we feel better about, some things we feel worse about. And Zach, I'm going to give you the floor right away. What is like your biggest and first stock riser at this point of the year?
I'll take the big one that I'm sure you want to talk about as well, and that's Jaden McDaniels. And how big has he been for this team? Just like changing into a guy that you can rely upon to get 17 a night. It's kind of insane that I think he's played 14 games. He obviously missed the last game against the Wizards. He hasn't had a single digit game in scoring the entire season. Like, I don't know how. Like that's a big change for him. He's all of a sudden taking and making these above the break threes that he'd never take. There's just so much more responsibility in his hands, and he's handling it really efficiently. And this is something we always thought he could do, and it's really coming to fruition now. And the leap really started last year around the January, February mark, and it continues to ascend. He's awesome at the rim, and he's still giving you, really high level defense as well. But Jaden has completely elevated the offense because now you have a real third option that you can rely upon to go to. And big moments, he's had multiple big time fourth quarters this year where he's been the guy, it feels like. And I think he could be one of these guys where we look up in like 4 or 5 years and he has like this 22, 23 point per game year and he makes an all-star game. I think we're trending towards that type of direction with Jaden.
The talent's always been there, and that's been a fun theme to kind of cover at this point of the season because, like you're mentioning, he's not only is he a more aggressive player, like you said, I think he hasn't scored single digits yet this year. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, you said that, and he not only that, like, there's only been a couple games where he's taken less than 10 shots, like, it happened recently when he shot, like, 5 for 6. In games like that, you want Jaden taking 12, 13 shots, but for the most part, he has been more efficient, and honestly, on top of being more aggressive and having more freedom to be that creator, I simply think he's a better basketball player now. Like you mentioned, the three-point shooting versatility, the comfort he is showing, being able to pull up off the dribble in fast break situations, like a little jab step, that shot from three he likes. Jaden is definitely evolved, and I think his shot looks better. I think like he used to have it kind of over the head, and he kind of had an awkward like come up, like didn't look fully comfortable, balance, a little stiff at the base, but it looks way more fluid coming up. His shot's a little more down here now, and that's probably making a big difference. Like I'm not a professional like shot analyst, but I'm sure that's made a big difference on his confidence, his fluidity, and he's clearly put a ton of work in. He's averaging 17 and a half points a game right now, currently leading the league in 3-point percentage. So he's doing a lot of good things right now. And I will kind of combine what you were saying about Jaden's leap, and I'm going to make it my first take as well. Because my first take, the Timberwolves have a big three. The big three stock is up. And I think a lot of the time it's been Rudy slash Cat slash Randall and Ant, but now it's not Rudy, it's Jaden McDaniels. And it's kind of a real big three, not in terms of just having 3-star caliber players, but 3 go-to players. And I think that's the bigger difference because Jaden McDaniels, like who we're talking about right now, he can get you a bucket now in a way where if Ant and Randall aren't going in some world, Jaden McDaniels can probably be a reliable tertiary option, which this team didn't have in the past. The closest is Nas Reed, and he has the talent to, but we've obviously known Nas's consistency can be a little up and down sometimes offensively. So Jaden kind of sliding in and being that legit third option behind Randall, who's having a career year. He's made multiple All NBA teams, and he's playing his best basketball of his career. So you think about that. And even though he's in a slump right now, none of us are worried about Anthony Edwards. So Minnesota, there's a lot of questions with this team right now, but I think one thing that's become much less of a question is the top end scoring talent this team has because Randall's playing better and Jaden McDaniels has slid into that third option.
Yeah, I mean, that's what this team needed. I mean, Gobert, you could probably still say he's the third most impactful player, but he's never going to be like this crazy offensive option for you. So Jaden being that guy is really impactful. It looks like Naz Reid's coming back to himself right now over the last 4 or 5 games. But yeah, like that's another potential riser that we could talk about is it's Julius Randle and how improved he's been in general. Yeah, now I want to talk about the first dropper. And it's I'm selling a little bit stock. I'm trying not to. I still have stock in this guy. It's Rob Dillingham. Um, the reason I have optimism for him in general is I feel like a lot of the issue right now is he's just not making his jumpers. He's been making jumpers his whole life. I feel like that's going to come around. I still feel optimistic about his future as a player, but it's like the confidence and just I just feel like there's something really bad happening there, and he just doesn't have this belief in himself, and he's openly talked about this before, and I just wonder if he can get out of his own head about this, and he just hasn't been able to hit jumpers consistently this year. He's been really inefficient on them. I'm Something I'm really worried about is just like the rim finishing because he gets blocked at the rim more than any player in the league, it feels like. I mean, just about every single one of his attempts at the rim feels like it's getting blocked. He has to get better in that sense. It will come with time as he gets bigger and all of that. I've liked a lot of the passing stuff I've seen from him. He's had some good moments with Gobert. I've loved the defensive effort, and that seemed improved on that end. But he's going to be a little bit more of a developmental guy than I thought, and it's just continue to build size, and he's got to get out of his own head. I feel like.
Yeah, the Rob Dillingham situation, it's going to be something to navigate. I'm not entirely sure what it's going to turn into. I thought when he got drafted here, Minnesota was like the perfect situation for him because we needed that kind of microwave guy on the bench. That's what my first thought was. They need a bucket getter. That's why they had a Jalen Noel. That's why they had a Shake Milton for a cup of coffee. That's why they've been targeting players like this in the past. So Rob Dillingham, I just thought was the most talented version of that. And the moment he's walked into the NBA, and this is an interesting conversation because we've talked about like the cat trade a little bit, but I think it's a net positive, right? Like Dante's an asset, Randall's an asset, Beringer, I think I'm most excited about among the young prospects. So I think of all of that. But maybe the biggest loser in the cat trade, bro, was Rob Dillingham because they did need that microwave go-to creator on the bench when they had Cat on the roster. But then once that trade happened, it sort of pivoted to we need less creation off the dribble and more so playmaking off the dribble. We need true point guard play and not just a shot maker. And you can kind of see Rob and just the overall team wanting to pivot toward like a traditional point guard style there. And Rob's been a part of that. And he's had his ups and downs. He's talked about needing to adjust that type of play style. Finch has talked about wanting him to be a rim attacker who kind of uses his speed to set up other players. And you can just see he's not He's thinking the game. He's not feeling the game. We've talked about that a lot on the show. And it's gone from thinking to doubt. And that's the scary thing because it felt like just a weird transition process. But I'm watching a player who's doubting himself right now, doubting his jump shot. I mean, this is a 6'1", 170-pound guy who the Washington Wizards literally just said, shoot threes, keep shooting threes. You're not going to make it. And that's the devastating thing about this. It's that it feels like the identity shift has gone from just a transition process to like, this is getting ugly. He has a minus 17 on off rating right now per 100 possessions, which is awful. It's the worst on the team by a country mile. And I'm not sure if he's not an effective scorer as a 6'1" guard with why he got drafted 8th overall, what the value he's going to bring. And if you don't play him, I'm not sure if that helps either. But if you keep playing him and telling him to keep playing this style, which the team could very much use, I'm not sure that's going to work either. Like, I'm getting really scared at this point, man, where this might not align. Like, that's starting to get into my head a little bit. Hopefully that's not true. Hopefully this is a transitional phase for him. But the Rob Dillingham situation for me is becoming more and more scary because he's a 6'1" guard. If he can't score or shoot, he's not going to be in the league. Look at Sharif Cooper.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I hope I'm begging him to just hit a few jumpers to start a game. I wonder what that could do for him. He always looks better after he makes a shot because always, I don't know. He just like he's being too passive sometimes too. Like I get upset when he passes up these wide open threes off the dribble and he refuses to take them.
Yeah.
Like he's not, like he's so capable of making that shot. It's just a confidence thing, I think, and hopefully that comes with time. Hopefully he can get some games strung together, and if he does, then I think he could figure it out. But I got to see that like one game. I need to see that like 15-point game off the bench where he's really efficient and is playmaking like crazy. Like we haven't had that this year. We had a few of those last year. We had that,
Mhm.
what was it, like 20 and 10 game versus Utah or something, and
Yeah. 18 and
he had
8.
another
Yeah.
yeah, like he had some of those games last year. We just haven't had it this year.
It's such a strange situation because I thought when he walked into the rotation last year, when the team started to need him, his confidence was so high. His belief in his shot was top level. He was efficient with the ball in his hands. His playmaking I thought was solid. I thought Rob showed signs of a potential star last year when he played early in the year. And whatever happened after he said the game's pretty easy, it's been pretty downhill since. Very downhill.
Yep.
So Rob just needs to go back to playing free. And I don't know what the dynamics is. I know Finch, as good of a coach he is, has some rigidity with the young players. He can be rigid with young players. That's true. We've seen that in the past. Like, you got to play a certain role. I'm not sure exactly what it is. Like, we've seen in the past, like Chris Finch, as good of a coach he is, as much as he's won for the franchise, I think there's some rigidness there sometimes with how he wants young players to contribute to winning. And I think it's good to have standards like you got to do this if you want to play, not really giving too much favoritism. But there's definitely some sort of disconnect where I think Rob is being very intentional about playing the archetype this team probably needs. But to the extent, for whatever reason it is, whether it's tough coaching or just his own self doubt or pressure, I don't know. But he doesn't play free at all as a creator. He's hesitant on every single shot he takes. And I'm not sure what the answer to this is, but until Rob Dillingham goes back to playing free basketball, what made him the 8th overall pick, which was his just immense creativity as a scorer, as a shot maker, he's not going to be an NBA player in a couple of years. That's how big of a difference this makes because you have to have superpowers to be a 6'1" player, a buck 70, and be a good NBA player. And he's not leaning into what made him that. And that's what's concerning because the floor with Rob is so low. Now, for me, my stock dropper this season is Minnesota's decision to let Nickeil Alexander-Walker go. And the Nickeil Alexander-Walker situation, like, I understood why he left. There's so much money that can go around. I think the Nas contract's fine. I think the Randall one is good. The Rudy extension's good. I'm not going to go around and say it was a bad decision. I'm not sure yet. There's a lot of basketball to be played. But Nickeil Alexander-Walker, since going to Atlanta, 19.7 points per game, averaging nearly 30 the last 3 games. He had nearly a 40-point game the other day. I did not see this in Nickeil Alexander-Walker personally. And there's been opportunity without Trae Young, and there probably wouldn't be the opportunity with Anthony Edwards on the team. So there's a lot of truth to that. But I think when you consider how bad Rob Dillingham has looked, how concerning the guard play is, it's not the prettiest thing to like sit back and watch Nickeil Alexander-Walker cook everybody when this team could use what Nickeil Alexander-Walker is bringing to the table. So I'm definitely a bigger skeptic of letting this guy go than I once was.
Yeah, it sucks. I love Nikhil so much. He's like my favorite archetype of player. Um, like we couldn't have just, traded Mike and a second rounder to Brooklyn for nothing just to free up cap space and then sign him.
Mm-hmm.
And like in hindsight, I wish like I probably would be going over the second apron to keep him. I don't completely know the long-term implications of back-to-back second apron years and all of that. Um, but like I think it would maybe be worth it at this point because he's been unbelievable. The rise continues in Atlanta. He was awesome in Minnesota. He's been starting for Trae Young, who's been out for this amount of time, and he's probably should continue to start when he comes back. I don't know how they're gonna figure that out. If they'll move like Rasashe to the bench or what, but it's somebody that I wish we could have kept because then you have the decision of do you start Donte or Nickeil, and Nickeil might be the guy that you start at this point. But yeah, he's somebody that you would probably go over the second apron for in hindsight.
Yeah, go over the second apron, or you have, I'm not sure exactly what the finances would look like, but you have Mike Conley on a $10 million contract, Rob Dillingham on an 8th overall contract money. I mean, if they weren't positive about Rob Dillingham and they let Nickeil go, that's where I would be a skeptic. I'm not sure what the Rob Dillingham situation has looked like over the summer going in and out, but it's definitely scary looking at the asset Minnesota might have lost if they don't get better play from Rob Dillingham and around the guard play. That's the scary part. It's kind of the combination between the two. Like you were saying about Rob, his stock is going down by the minute. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker, especially because Minnesota, their defense has fallen off without him. This isn't even the offense. He's averaged 20 a game in Atlanta, but we know he brings more defense than offense, and Minnesota hasn't been a top 10 defense yet. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a big reason for that. So, and then there's the other conversation, like should you keep Nickeil or Nas? And I'm still pro Nas. I still think he'll figure it out. And he's starting to play better on both ends of the floor, but it sucks that they couldn't keep both somehow. They couldn't keep both, especially because of how little I trusted the guard play, and you did too, going into the season. So that's definitely something to watch. Maybe he falls back to earth and goes back to like 12 points a game. It's early in the year, who knows? But Nickeil, in a lot of ways, Minnesota misses them.
Yeah, I mean, he wouldn't have the same statistical output here in Minnesota, and it would create this like massive guard logjam unless you could move off of Mike Conley somehow. So it wouldn't, be like you're getting a 19 point per game now in Minnesota. You're probably getting what you always had in him and maybe slightly elevated. So I'm not, yeah, I think Atlanta's probably best for him in his development at this point. He definitely has a bigger role over there, and he deserves a bigger role too.
Yeah, and he's thriving with that bigger role. So, what is your next positive take?
My next positive take is that I'm starting to like feel some Rudy Gobert potential fifth defensive player of the year type stuff. With Wembenyama, I don't think Wembenyama is going to make the 65 game mark. Saw a stat yesterday that I posted. It was so good. Rudy Gobert is allowing opponents are shooting 39% on Rudy Gobert at the rim, which is unbelievably the best in the league. like you talk about other top defense player of the year candidates like Wembanyama over 50%. Like there's a 11% difference there between him and then Wembanyama, who a lot of people prefer as the defense player of the year candidate. We obviously know how drastic of a difference there is in the defense when Rudy's on the court versus off the court. I don't know how the updated numbers, but like a week ago, it was Minnesota was the second best defense in the league when he's on, and third, and they were the last. Like they were
Yeah.
so far beyond. There was a bigger gap between the number two defense at the time, which was the Spurs, and the Brooklyn Nets, than there were between the Nets and then what the Wolves were with Rudy off the court. So the value that he brings is imparalleled compared to the rest of the league. At to this point, the big question is, can the Timberwolves defense be good enough? Because you need to be on top 10 unit. Currently, I just looked, we're 13th. So it's
Mhm.
rising for sure. We were like bottom 5 for a little bit because of how bad the non-Rudy minutes were. So it's starting to rise. The non-Rudy minutes are getting better. Like I would assume Wembanyama wins the award if he plays 65. I'm getting skeptical that he will. If he doesn't, I think where it really becomes down between, Gobert and Chet and maybe another guy or two. And if Gobert is averaging the 2 blocks per game, about Minnesota's a top 7 defense. The Wolves are one of the top, teams in the West. And
Mhm.
there's just this clear, issue when he's off the court defensively. He's got a good case.
Yeah, that's very interesting sentiment on Rudy because I do think there's a lot of truth. Like right now, they are 107-ish defensive rating with him on, 124 with him off. It's kind of leveled out a little bit, but it's still a pretty fantastic rating. And I mean, Rudy Gobert, even for his faults for a lot of people, they like to mention, he is still one of the most talented rim protectors in the world. And he's been very good defensively. I will not deny that. And I'm going to kind of cheat a little bit on the flow of the show because we've kind of been doing positive, negative, or positive, positive, and then negative, negative. But I'll just say I had Rudy Gobert as a stock dropper on my list. And the reason why I had Rudy as a stock dropper is the difference we've seen him playing against above 500 teams. He's been averaging 6 points and 6 rebounds and just over a block against those teams. And they're scoring over 126 points per game in those games. And a lot of it's because Randall and Nas are not defending well against good teams. There's a lot of truth to that. But then I would also say maybe the defensive on off is slightly inflated because of those two really struggling together. And also, Rudy, Minnesota's played 10 below 500 teams. And maybe that's slightly inflating Rudy's impact at the rim. I know he's a great interior defender, and that's going to stay the case. But I'm just concerned because the schedule, and it's going to be like this, honestly, through Christmas, it's been cupcake. It's been very easy. And is that going to change once he plays against really good basketball teams with high level centers? That's my big concern because so far he hasn't showed up against those type of bigs. And I mean, he's played 18 minutes against Denver. He's starting, I think, to show some of his physical limitations more and more once he plays up a couple weight classes when he's not playing Utah's backup center because Walker Kessler's out. I'm a little more worried about Rudy just because of what we've seen when the competition has risen.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I mean, we've only seen like 5 games against those teams, so hopefully if the sample grows, he can have some good games against those better teams, but that's yet to be seen. I mean, um, yeah, I mean, he's gotta produce against those teams. He had some struggles versus obviously OKC offensively in the playoffs, and, better teams know how to handle him better, and his deficiencies show more. I do think it also shows just like we still don't have options to maximize Rudy as an offensive weapon, and it's harder to maximize him if you're playing teams that know how to get defensive rebounds and all of that, because we still don't have a guy who can like run a pick and roll and throw a lob to Rudy consistently. That's something that we just haven't had in Minnesota in the Rudy Gobert tenure. And honestly, like the best guy at doing that was Cat for the years that he was here, and now he's gone, obviously. Um,
Yeah.
so, that's part of the Rob Dillingham stuff too, because he's the best option to maximize Rudy Gobert. So he's got to figure it out because he's had some nice passing moments to Rudy this year, even though they haven't played a ton. Um, but he'd be the guy to maximize him.
That's like the other issue with Rudy though. It's always a conversation about how can we make it work around him. That's always the conversation. And when he was a Utah Jazz and he was the star, he was the franchise player, that's more understandable because he's at the peak of his powers and he was a walking top 3 defense. I mean, he's still a really great defender, but he's not quite what he was in Utah. So the question about it always being about maximizing Rudy Gobert when it can maybe sacrifice other things around the team, like some, pace things and spacing things around Rudy. That's where I kind of get a little frustrated by that conversation with Rudy Gobert because if it's always going to be all about maximizing Rudy Gobert and a Rudy Gobert team hasn't made it to the conference finals as the best player, that makes me a little bit uneasy about the conversation. So, yeah, and I mean, Rudy, I do think there's truth to Minnesota hasn't had a lot of like great connective lob threats. Right now, I mean, next best guy might be Jaden McDaniels after Mike Conley, right? So it's not
Yeah.
perfect, but yeah, Rudy is an interesting one because he's a great player. I mean, he's going to make the Hall of Fame and he deserves it. He's the best defender from 2010 to 2020, most likely. So he does deserve that understanding in that respect. But at this point in time, 2025 to 2026, can Rudy Gobert be relied upon in big games? And the way he's paid, that's kind of a necessity.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so we kind of broke that little pattern right there with the positive, positive, negative, negative, because I did a positive, negative. But to fix that, how about you do a negative and I do a positive, and then we'll kind of refresh.
So my next negative is it's not like in the back of our brains because he hasn't played in a little bit, but Terrence Shannon Jr. filling the Nikhil Alexander Walker role, which is something that I actually had some confidence in happening, not 100%, but like 80% just hasn't happened. And when Shannon's played, just hasn't looked very good to this point. I think that will change. But the early on games were not very encouraging for Shannon. The 3-point shot wasn't going, and he didn't have that like full court athleticism impact that I thought he would have throughout games and really impact them in that way. I think it was just a bad sample and just like a bad start, and I think he'll figure it out. But we just haven't gotten that Terrence Shannon Jr. impact to this point. And I mean, he's been out for a few weeks now, so we haven't really been thinking about him. But if this guy can come back and produce the way that I thought he was going to produce in the preseason, like that would be such a difference maker for this roster.
Yeah, Terrence Shannon. It's so hard because I don't know where to put him on this list. I thought about putting Terrence Shannon in there as a dropper, but I still want to see what he looks like when he gets back healthy.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if there's a dude on this team that would be affected by a foot injury, it would be Terrence Shannon Jr. And nobody really knows how long that's been affecting him. And I've always thought 26% at the rim, that doesn't make a lot of sense for Terrence Shannon. Even if his stock is dropping, that's not what's going to drop unless there's, exterior factors in the situation, like an injury. So I think Terrence Shannon, though, like you're, insinuating, he's going to be a big player on this team if they can make up for the Nikhil impact as well. Not just Rob Dillingham, but Terrence Shannon as well, and Jalen Clark. Between those three, all of them need to kind of, chip in there. But if Terrence Shannon cannot be an impactful player this year, that's going to be a big concern because they put a lot into it. And some really smart people in the organization, from Tim Connolly to Chris Finch, they're all like, we're good. We got Terrence Shannon. And he got, I mean, from preseason to start of the year, he was kind of one of the first guys subbed in. So I think the team has earned the ethos to not miscalculate that much. So until we see more and it's like confirmed, like, oh, Terrence Shannon, just not the guy we hoped he would be, then we'll get there when we get there. But I'll give him a little more patience, maybe a very slight drop, but I think Terrence Shannon compared to a Rob, I'm a little more forgiving toward.
Yeah, no, I'm more of like I don't like drop isn't like the best word for what I would say for him. It's just like a slight stock drop off because of what I thought he was going to be to this point, and we just
Mhm.
haven't seen it yet. And like if the foot injury was like happening when he was playing, like that makes sense, and that would completely make like reason why he wasn't playing super well because his game is so predicated off athleticism. So if he
Mhm.
can't use that to his full ability or like comfortability, it's gonna destroy his game.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It'll be fun to navigate. We'll see what happens with Terrence Shannon Jr. I'm still hopeful. He just
I
lacked
am too.
burst around the rim. I tweeted about it early in the year. I was just like, this guy lacks burst right now. He lacks verticality from what we remember. So that makes me, even though I'm not a doctor and I'm not in the team, I do think that probably those are very fair dots to connect. So yeah, I think Terrence Shannon, let's wait and see, right? But I will give another stock riser, and that is Jalen Clark. Because Jalen Clark has also been an unbelievable defender for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Like Rudy Gobert, you can say has been maybe the most impactful overall defender just because of what he brings as a rim protector. But I think when you look at Jalen Clark and what he brings as a defender on and off the court, I mean, get this as a point of attack defender, when he's on the court, 105.7 defensive rating. That's like right there with the best in basketball for a team. When he's off the court, it's not like Rudy, but it's still 116, which kind of goes from excellent to average ish. So Jalen Clark has been incredible defensively. And I think recently, like on the season, he's shooting 36% from three. He's shooting better lately, and he draws a lot of fouls. So offensively, he's never going to get in the way, but when he does get the ball, he's going to fairly make an efficient three, or he's going to get to the free throw line, which I think if you could do those two things as a role player, that makes you somewhat of an advantage offensively. So I wouldn't call Jalen Clark, a zero on offense, and he's definitely a triple ace on defense. So he's been awesome. And Rudy Gobert compared him to Tony Allen, and I've seen Bruce Bowen comps, and I think Jalen Clark, among those three young players, Rob Dillingham, Terrence Shannon, Jalen Clark, he's definitely been the most impressive to this point of the season. And he's somebody that I think is going to be super valuable going forward.
There's been like 10 times where like stuff's hitting the fan and the Wolves just can't do anything. And then Chris Finch subs Jalen Clark in and like magically everything is figured out. He just like he's like the glue to the team in some sense. He just plays this unbelievable tough role that works so well with everybody around him. Every team in the league needs a guy like Jalen Clark in some sense. So yeah, I think if he played 20 minutes a night on the Lakers, he would be an All NBA defender pretty easily. I think he's a caliber All NBA defender. I think he's one of the top 10 perimeter defenders in the NBA. He just doesn't play that much. He plays like
Mm-hmm.
15 minutes per game. So you're not going to make an all NBA defensive team off of that. I think he's a better defender than Nikhil Alexander Walker. It's just Nikhil's all that extra offensive stuff. So we'll see. He's definitely, like you said, been the most impressive out of those three guys. He's the most playoff ready of those three guys, and his role should continue. And honestly, right now, we should be like trying to talk with him and about extension. Like, hey, do you want to sign this 4-year deal right now? Because he's going to get pricier and pricier the longer we wait.
Yeah, he's somebody I can see signing like a 4-year, $52 million contract this summer, kind of like an Isaiah Joe type contract. I can totally see that. And it's way too early to get into the offseason. What is he going to
Yeah,
sign for? But I think he's one of those players you just want on the winning basketball team. And I can say that with full confidence. He's just a winning player. So Jalen Clark, shout out, man. You're awesome. Now, Zach, what is
everybody
your
loves
next
Jalen Clark.
positive?
My next positive, there's a few that I could decide between. I'm going to go with the offense. I think the offense is, I mean, this is the best Wolves offense we've seen since, I don't know, ever.
Yeah.
the 3-point shooting's been unbelievable. Like, there's gonna be some regression with that, like, I mean, positive regression in some areas, like Anthony Edwards is not gonna continue to shoot, like, 5% from 3 like he has been the last 3 games, but, Jaden McDaniels probably won't be shooting 52% from 3 the whole year, but even with Gobert in the court, the spacing looks great. Randall has been a big part of this just with his isolation play and then the shot making as well, but the court seems to be spaced out. The team's playing with a higher level of pace this year, which has been super important. I think a big reason that is because Dante is rightfully entered the starting lineup instead of Mike Conley. So the offense is playing with more pace. It's more efficient. We got so many just insane 3-point shooters on the roster. I think this team
Mhm.
is much more set to be dominant in the postseason offensively, and I would rather us be a slightly better offense than defense in some sense because I think that's what it will take to beat some of these top teams in the Western Conference this postseason coming up.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I think and that kind of connects to the early topic about the rising big three, right? You just have three high level offensive talents potentially if Jaden McDaniels continues this play. And you have two go to isolation scorers, and Ant and Julius. And I mean, this is a top four offense in the NBA so far this season. So I think the offense, like you're talking about, it's just going to be probably the identity of this team this year. I think with 15 games into the season, the defense has gotten better. It's back to above average, but how much of that is you're playing against bad teams? Who knows? I think we'll need to see more. But I think when you have a three-headed monster offensively, and you have Naz Reid and Dante who can get hot any single given night, you have Mike Conley there. We'll see with Terrence Shannon and Rob. Like these are guys I would talk about outside of like Jaden, Rudy, and Jalen Clark. And I'm like, these are offensive minded players for the most part. So it's a good ceiling raiser for this team when this team can be near the top of the league in scoring. I mean, the offense got better last year. It was pretty average when they were the third seed a couple years ago. But I think this is definitely the best offense we've seen. And I don't really see this going away unless there's a big law of averages, like a trend like Jaden McDaniels going back to earth that brings us down. But I don't really foresee that. So no, I'm with you. I think that's definitely a huge positive. And my next positive to continue that idea is Donte DiVincenzo because Donte, even though like there's some Donte things, like he's going to be a little bit inconsistent because he's a shooter. He wants to shoot. And there's variance that comes with being a shooter who's more of a complementary player than a primary creator for a guard. But I mean, this year he's putting up 14 points a game, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. I think he's been really good. 40% from three nearly. He's just Dante, I think, is more comfortable with his team this year. I think he's naturally a starting point guard when you play next to an Anthony Edwards, especially. Like if you put Dante in more of a complementary guard role next to a star guard, kind of like what happened with Jalen Brunson in New York, I think you get a really good starting Dante who's worth more than the $12 million he's making right now. And that's exactly what he's doing. He's playing much better basketball than he did to start last year. And I think Dante, in this type of role, when he's empowered to be a starting caliber guard, you're going to get the best version of him. And for the most part, I think Minnesota is getting a very positive version of Dante, just a winning, tough player who can hit big shots, make good decisions. I mean, he's a Villanova guard. So shout out Dante, man, because I think he starting at point guard this year was the right decision.
And I think he should continue to start. And I don't think that, I mean, I'm cool with Tim Connolly exhausting all options to see what the market value is for these guys like Morant and like, I'm sure like LaMelo Ball stuff might start up soon because why not? Um, but like,
Oh, we're getting into that now?
I don't see a reason to why we should be like absolutely trying to upgrade the point guard position. Like whenever I
Mhm.
post like this questionnaire on my Instagram story, half the questions are like, what's the answer at the point guard spot? What's the upgrade we're gonna make? And I'm like, I don't think we need to make one. I think Dante's the guy there. I think he's a great
Yeah.
fit next to Ant. Obviously, like it would be cool if, I mean, I think Dante's good enough as a ball handler to where he can take reps away from Ant. Like the idea is you don't want Ant to have all of that on his shoulders in the playoffs, but you can put the ball in Dante's hand enough, especially when he's shooting it like he is. Obviously, there's way more concerns if you get the early version of Dante last year and the ball is in his hands. But when he's shooting mid 40s from three on this ridiculous volume and he's passing it well, like I don't have any issue with the ball in his hands like this. I think he's a great fit next to Ant. He provides so much spacing because we've talked about Gobert, the spacing concerns he brings. Dante
Hmm.
offsets that a bit. Like a huge, like the biggest issue in the playoffs last year against the Thunder was you had Mike Conley and Gobert next to Ant. Mike Conley averaged like 2 points per game in that series and like 20% from the field. And then Gobert obviously is not a shooter. So the spacing next to Ant and Jaden and Randall was absolutely destroyed. Now you have a guy like Dante next to those guys all the time, and it's this 14 point per game monster off the ball that you have to worry about constantly. So I don't really understand the idea of sending all of the rest of your assets and like completely shaking up the roster to go get a guy like Morant that I think a lot of Wolves fans have been talking about. Um, or like just upgrading the spot in general. We don't need to go get a Trey Young. We don't need to get a Darius
Hmm.
Garland. Everybody wants one of these guys. I don't think we need like it'd be cool to get one of them for 75 cents on the dollar, but I'm not trying to exhaust all of our assets to go get them when we have a thing that's working in a top five offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're going to know more answers once you play a team like OKC that might be the best team of the 2000s. It might be. We need to see more
Might be.
basketball. But I mean, I think they're right there at the Warriors at their peak right now. Like that's how scary good they are. And Oklahoma City, they just exposed we didn't have enough ball handlers. And I do have questions. I think Dante is a better solution than Mike Conley is. But Mike Dante, he struggles with on-ball pressure too. I mean, you saw the first game this year against Portland. He struggled a little bit. Maybe it was last second starting at point guard, but I mean, Portland, they have all these long physical defenders who they can throw on him and he's going to get out of rhythm. But I also will say, like long term, when you think of what's the ideal guard next to Anthony Edwards, if it isn't a real star that can be his Robin, I think a guard who plays hard, can play off the ball, can really shoot, make good connected decisions. That's a very ideal archetype. I mean, just look at what his archetype in the past has worked with. I think you look at Kobe having Derek Fisher. You look at Dwayne Wade having a Mario Chalmers. You look at the players they had around Michael Jordan, right? Like Ron Harper or Steve Kerr, right? These off-ball players who are comfortable playing off of MJ's gravity. That's not for every point guard in the world. But I think Dante, there's a world where he can be that type of complimentary guard who's not a star, but he just does the complimentary things to just space the floor and make it calmer on the court around Ant. So I think Dante, there's a world if Jaden can be that star and they have enough around them that he can be that fourth starter next to Anthony Edwards at the point guard position. So Dante, I agree. I obviously it's my take, so I agree, but he's very much in a very positive light for me, and it makes the cat trade look even better on that front. You get Randall and Dante, two really good starters. I mean, shout out Dante.
Baron J.
Berger, and then you got the
Baron J.
next Gobert just
Yep.
developing with good hands. I mean, you know what? Best trade ever. But yeah, so now we have to close the show out. Maybe I kind of regret this, closing it out negatively, sort of, but give me your two negatives.
Yeah, so I mean, we've talked about one of them a lot. It's just like and it's gotten better than Oz Randall defensive backcourt. Just it's not fun watching that. But I think just also the defensive rebounding something we need to see improve a lot. We're 19th in the league in defensive rebounding percentage. That's been a big issue in some of our losses, specifically the Knicks one. Um, just like I constantly notice we're just like not boxing out, some guys aren't. And maybe
Mhm.
that's part of like we're trying to focus too much on pace and offense and we're trying to worry about, what we're getting to our offensive actions. Maybe that's been kind of an issue. We're not focusing on finishing possessions defensively enough. So maybe you see a little bit more balance in that aspect, but we cannot be as bad as we've been on the defensive glass the rest of the year. And it will only get worse. Like we've talked about with competition getting harder throughout the season. So
Mhm.
we got to figure that out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the rebounding is a big question. That is actually what I said about the Timberwolves, just the overall physicality. Because when you look at the rest of the roster at this point in time, as great as Julius Randle is playing, he's not giving you 9, 10 boards like he did in New York. Jaden isn't great on the glass unless he chooses to be. And we saw last year when he chooses to be, he could be really good off the glass. I mean, it's not a great rebounding team, and it's not a very physical team in certain fronts. Like they're physical in some fronts because they're just so big and they can really at their peak lock people down. But some of the little things with this team, like diving for the loose ball, getting the rebounds, when they find somebody, more importantly, that matches that physicality, that size, more often than not, I'm like, Minnesota, where are you? You got to fight this through. And that's the question that comes back to what are they going to do when the competition gets better? Once they play better teams, they're more likely to find teams that balance that physicality. And how do they respond? It's a really big question.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to watch. And yeah, Gobert also has to probably improve on the defensive glass. I think he's still below 10 rebounds per game. I want to see that get up a little bit. He's got to be averaging that
Average
double
6
double.
rebounds a game against those teams. He can't. The fact that he's
Yeah.
averaging 6 rebounds against the DeAndre Aytons, the Mitchell Robinsons, and obviously he was pretty MIA against Denver, that can't happen. You can't have that
Yep.
if Minnesota wants to go somewhere in the playoffs. Because what Minnesota struggles with, and it continues to be a problem, like Minnesota doesn't win the possession battle a lot. They're going to turn the ball over, and if they're not getting rebounds, which they should, that's a bigger problem. And that's a part of the question against really good teams. How consistently can they win the possession battle? Because they're going to turn over the ball. I'm pretty confident in that. It's not like awful right now. I believe it's around league average, but if they
It's like
can't
when you
be a top
combine
10,
that.
when you
It's like
add them
it's when
together.
yeah, yeah. Like when you combine like we're, a little below average in both aspects, like that's a big deal.
No, absolutely. That is a big deal. But okay, before we end the show, what's your optimism level about this team 1 to 10?
Probably like a 7, 8. I like, we haven't done much against great teams this year, but with the ascension of the big 3, I do like our odds to make a deeper like we obviously made it deeper than last year, but like I feel better about us winning a title this year because while Anthony Edwards has been not good the last 3 games, I think Anthony Edwards is a better basketball player this year. I think Jaden
Mhm.
McDaniels is a better basketball player. I think Julius Randle's a better basketball player. And that's ultimately what matters the most to me right now is those guys have taken leaps. And I think that's kind of just what we need. Donte DiVincenzo is a better basketball player. So yeah, I feel like I feel better about the team this year than last year, which last year, by the way, we were 8-18 in our first
Mhm.
18 games and had like this 4-game losing streak. Because remember, we had the Julius Randle buzzer beater. Then I think we lose at home to Miami. We lose a different game. Then we lose back to back games in Portland, which Portland was a worse team than that year. So, like,
Mhm.
we're off to a much better start. We're beating bad teams this year. We're 10-0 against losing record teams. That was one of my positive takeaways. I think we figured out bad teams finally in Minnesota because for whatever reason we sucked against them last year and we sucked against them in Gobert's first year in 22
Mhm.
23, and that was the reason why in those years we weren't hosting a playoff series. It was literally just because we couldn't beat bad teams. So
Mhm.
even if we struggle against some good teams this year, if we can handle the bad teams like we are right now, like this is going to be a top 4 seed probably in the conference.
It's so funny because I feel like this year the bad teams are even worse than last year. Doesn't
They
it feel
are.
that way? I think
In the
5
Eastern
teams
Conference
are
for sure.
I think 5 teams are like below 200 right now, if I'm not mistaken. It's that bad right now. I didn't feel like it
Yeah.
was that bad last year. Like there's always bad teams. There's always the Wizards, whatever. But there's just a lot of bad basketball teams right now. And from the moment we're recording this, there's another bad basketball team this team is playing tonight. So it's definitely something that's a positive for this team that they don't allow a lot of these bad teams to get them bored and they start playing with their food. I'll say my optimism level for this team, 1 to 10, is like a 6.8, something like that. Because I think the 6.8 comes from, like you're saying, I think the ceiling, if everything goes right for this team, is even higher because, like you mentioned, there's an ascending big three on this team, which they didn't have before necessarily, especially offensively. And also, like you're saying, there's signs of maturity. Like they're killing bad teams. And I think there's something to be said about that, even if teams are somehow even worse this year at the bottom. There's a lot of truth to that. I would say the 3.2 that's missing, we got to see how the bench turns out. How does Rob and TSJ integrate themselves once again? Does Minnesota really only have one scorer off the bench? That's a question. Hopefully not. We came into this year hoping they were like three, maybe four sometimes, but that hasn't been the case so far. So let's see that. And just when they play great teams and they're going to throw their bodies at you, they're going to be physical, whether it's an OKC, whether it's a Denver, even like teams like Portland, who are kind of more middle of the pack teams. How does the team respond? Can Rudy Gobert throw his body around those guys? Can other guys chip in, add to that physicality? How do they do in possession battles in those games? Because right now there's a lot of pressure at the top of your big three to play well right now against great teams. Because if they don't, then it's like, okay, who's showing up? Does Donte and Nas, do they play great? Because they kind of have to if one of those big three don't. And then after that, it trickles down to like, who else is showing up offensively? And if they're not winning the possession battle on top of that, let alone the defense not being as great yet as other years, that's when you start questioning, like, is this team just not as good against great teams this year? Because they've been great in the past against high level teams. I don't know. I'm not saying those answers are firm. I think there's a lot of reasons for all those things to be fixed. But at this point, I think I have to see it. Like I'm kind of yellow flags on a lot of those issues more so than red flags.
Yeah, and I mean, this is the great part about an 82 game NBA season. Like, imagine the sentiment of the fan base after that 8-10 start, and everybody wanting to ship Randall off for like bags of chips. And then imagine the sentiment after we beat the Lakers in five, and we're like 25-5 in our last 30 or whatever with Randall or something ridiculous. So I'm excited to see the growth for this team this year. I think we're off to a much better start than we were last year for like obvious reasons. There's real continuity. These guys have played together. But yeah, we got to figure out what that playoff rotation is. That's definitely a question as the year goes on. Who's in it? Who's not? Is Rob Dillingham in the playoff rotation? That's a big question. I don't know.
Indeed, that's what happens in an 82 game season. You get to see the teams evolve, mature, especially the Timberwolves in the past few years. Very rarely, this team is the same version at the end as they are in the beginning. So, a lot of these things I'm sure will evolve in a positive front, which is why, there's really no worry about this team in terms of playoff picture. I mean, they're 10-5 right now, which is the third best start in the last 20 years for this team. So there's a lot to be excited about this team. And Zach, I appreciate you being on the show, man. It's been super fun catching up with you.
Yeah, it was great talking basketball, and I'm excited to see how this year plays out.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. If you guys want to hop on Wolves Fandom Friday, just DM me what's on tap NBA on Instagram or X, or you can email me wilder@wilderadams.com. You're the best, Zach. Super appreciate you. This is Wilder Wolves Hall of Fame Mode Fandom.